Welcome to Hoops and Headsets, episode 5. Today's episode, we are going to dive into Galatasaray and have a look at their chances of progressing and potentially lifting the trophy at the EuroLeague Women's Final 6. Again, I'm joined by Shona Thorburn. Shona, welcome back. Episode 5. We are already there. We need a birthday candle or something, it feels like. So, Galatasaray, first question for you. Obviously, the summer, they grabbed a lot of attention very early on in the summer. We all got really excited as they just kept rolling out social media posts with pretty much a list of some of the best players on the planet. With so many stars in this roster for the season, who has impressed you and who has surprised you most by their performance this year?
I'm going to have to go with Dorka Uaz. I think it has been her best season as a professional. Since, she's young. She's still, she hasn't played as many years because she went to the U.S. She went to university, of course. So, compared to some of these other Europeans who are her age, who have that kind of background already. But boy, has she made a jump in her game this year. And it's definitely paid off to the success for Galatasaray. But I think it's also helped Hungary qualify for the World Cup for the first time in many, many years as well. And to me, I have just really, really loved watching her play this year.
Yeah, I think she's the one, and again, literally and metaphorically, who's kind of head and shoulders above the rest. Yeah. She's just been consistent, and the thing that I've loved when I've watched Galatasaray and commentated on them, she's the player they go to. Yep. When the game's going against them, when rotations have gone a little bit wrong or the flow of the game, she's the one that comes off the bench and ball in her hands. It's, and that's a statement when you have a roster that's that stuffed with talent. If you're the player that they go to when there's a bit of a problem, things are going well for you, right? With that, obviously she decided to take the year out from the W last year. Is that a factor, do you think? She's hit this season super fresh, ready to go, both mentally and physically?
I think so, absolutely. She didn't play big minutes in the W, let's not forget. But it still takes a lot out of you mentally and physically. And I think maybe not getting much playing time took more out of her mentally than she maybe even realized. Let's not forget, she was still on Minnesota, so it was a very good team playing late into the playoffs. So I remember a couple of years ago, she arrived late to Skio, and so she was already, not at training camp, missed the exhibition games, missed a few games of the regular season and of the regular season in EuroLeague. And I think, it's hard to get back into the swing of things. And I don't know if it's because she didn't go to the WNBA, but something has changed. She has just, like you said, been the most consistent player on Galatasaray. Yeah. But not just that. I had the opportunity to see her play with Hungary at the World Cup qualifiers in Istanbul, Turkey, and it's her skill set. She was doing stuff that I had not seen her do before, and it wasn't like the first time, like a step back 3-point shot. And I'm like, I did not know you had that in your bag. And it did not look uncomfortable. So it's clearly in her bag of tricks. Yeah. And it was just, and it's what she's been doing. There's some times where Galatasaray, oddly enough, has a hard time scoring, which surprises me a little bit. But, she'll still have about 40% of her team's points in a win. And it just shows you how talented she is. So maybe a little bit of time off. A lot of these athletes go 12 months a year. She was doing that, went from university straight to the WNBA, straight to playing in Europe professionally, was with the national team, trying to qualify for the Olympics in 2024. So maybe she mentally and physically just needed a break. And I'm glad she took it because we're seeing the best version of her.
Yeah, we really are. I saw her courtside. You would have seen her as well in Athens, just there as a fan, and she looks so relaxed at Women's Eurobasket. She looked super chilled, sunny's on, not a care in the world. And sometimes, we talked about this. You're on that treadmill. It is domestic season, international season, into this, into that, and it just doesn't stop. And you have to intentionally jump yourself off the treadmill and potentially lose some money, as she will have, not playing the season in the W, to do that. And it certainly has paid off. I think the other thing that's happened at Galatasaray that's really helped her, it feels like they are happy for her to be a stretch four. And I don't know if she's properly had that in her career. It feels like most rosters that she's played in or under most coaches, they've wanted her to be an old school back to the basket four. Whereas now they're quite happily stretching the floor with her. And she's relishing that opportunity. And like you're saying, she's developed the skill set and she's now showing that skill set off.
Mm-hmm. But what I like too about her game is that she doesn't only rely on shooting from outside now, where a lot of bigs, just the way that the game has evolved, most bigs can shoot threes now. Positions 4 or 5, doesn't matter. They can shoot threes. And she can do that, like we've talked about, but she's still okay with getting the ball in the low post or in the short corner and trying to attack the basket as well. So she does not shy away from that. And she doesn't only rely on her 3-point shooting to have big games, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can understand why she's in the conversations about the awards this year, and she'll be up there at the kind of top of those lists without a shadow of a doubt. Kind of zooming out, as I said, they kind of went out and did a kind of trading cards kind of vibe and just picked the best possible players they could in the summer. Is it difficult? Because lots of them are new. They've never played together before. They've all come with huge amounts of experience, their own personal ego. Every player has it and needs it. Otherwise, you can't be a great player without it. Is it difficult to kind of bring all those pieces together and make them actually a functional team? And is it easy to do it quickly? Because Galatasaray seemed pretty good pretty early in the season.
Yeah, I don't think it's an easy job. So, we have seen a coaching change, and maybe that was part of it. We don't know. We don't have the inside scoop about that necessarily, but it's not an easy task. I think their Turkish players do a really good job of kind of bringing the team together, bringing the superstars together, because the Turkish players will always just do the dirty work. And I think they deserve a little bit more hype than just the superstars that Galatasaray went out and got, because they accept their role so much. But I think, ego aside, you have to do sometimes. And I think, Marine Johannes has done that because she has less touches than maybe before in some other teams that she's played for, because they do have a lot of superstars beside her as well. And, it's not easy, and maybe that's why the coaching change happens. So, but whatever they've done something right, because they're heading in with a number 1 seed and won't need to play until the semifinals.
Yeah, it certainly helps missing that quarterfinal, although some people say it doesn't. Fenerbahce weren't happy about that last year and kind of put that as one of the reasons why they lost that semi-final, that they hadn't had a tune-up game in Zaragoza compared to, Praha, who had, and that was the reason for their downfall. So who knows? But I'd be the same. I'd rather be guaranteed a semi-final spot than have to have a tough quarterfinal to make my way through. With that many stars, with the hype that their fans would have put on them, we as neutrals from the outside put on them, does that put pressure on the club? Is it a season for them now where it is lift the trophy or it's failure? Or is it part of a progression that we're now seeing more investment from Galatasaray as a club into their women's basketball program, into their playing staff, and this is step 1 of them building towards becoming a kind of dynasty type team in EuroLeague Women's?
I hope that's the case. I hope it's not just a one and done. And if they don't lift the trophy this year, we're going to reduce the funding and put it into the men's. They did, before they started announcing all the players, they did make announcements like, we're investing in the women's team. And I hope it's not just a 1-year investment, and we'll continue to see that grow, because I think the women's game, the women's players in Galatasaray, they deserve that. I think because of this big investment that the club has made, there has to be a little bit of pressure. I think that's normal. It's just like players. If you're the highest paid player on the team, and you're not producing the numbers that they expected you to, you have to take some responsibility. It's also the coach's responsibility as well, and the staff.
Yeah.
But, you have to produce if you're one of the best players, one of the highest paid players. So I do hope that this is the start. Obviously their general manager, Usha Albin, who Turkish legend in her own right, um, I think has done a good job and, going after these players. And obviously she's probably talking closely with the president and the leaders of the club. But I hope this isn't a one and done if they do end up not lifting the trophy.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. It feels like it isn't, but I don't kind of get too excited too soon about these kind of situations.
We've seen it before.
Yeah.
Happen
We've seen investment go in and then get pulled away.
Turkish teams.
Yeah.
So this is what worries me. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
No.
Yeah, that's the only thing that kind of worries me is I have, not necessarily with Galatasaray, but we have seen this happen before.
Yeah. And it would be a shame. You'd love to see, the core of this team to return next year, for them to be on multi-year deals. So you can build that consistency. You're not starting from square zero every time. You're a few steps down the journey at the start of the season because the majority of players already know each other. Coach is locked in. You're not running new offenses. You're not got a complete different philosophy of that you're trying to play basketball in a different way. And it would be really good. There's no two ways about it. It would be amazing. And the win all mentality, I don't think that is on for Galatasaray this year when I think about it. I think they're expected to get to the final. Anything less than that, I think there would be a problem. I think big questions would be asked. If they get to the final and they meet Fenerbahce, I think, yes, of course they want to win, but I think their performance level and the gap will be the bigger deciding factor. If they're within 10 points and they end up losing, I think Galatasaray will be like, right, we're ready to go again. If they get there and they lose by 30, 40, that's tougher to sell to your fan base overall, I imagine, in what is such a ferocious fandom market of Istanbul. How do you sell that away? You can't be seen to lose by that many, and that might be the problem. But if they can get to the final, and if it is Fenerbahce that they face, and they're close, if it's not Fenerbahce, then absolutely they have to win. The expectation would be to win. But if it's Fenerbahce, I don't think it necessarily is a win at all costs. I think it is, how close are we? How close are we? And if anything, that might lure them into putting a bit more in next year to get that extra superstar through the door to get the job done. But who knows? We will see, I suppose. The second question I have for you around Galatasaray, you've touched on it briefly. I've really enjoyed covering their games because they do lean on their Turkish core. They lean on their domestic players, almost as a very clear second unit that comes onto the floor. How important is it to have that Turkish core for Galatasaray? How big have they been for them this season?
Enormous. Like I said, I mean, these are the kind of players that are going to do absolutely anything that the team needs them to do. I'm pretty sure if coach says to Fittek, run through the wall, she would run through a wall.
100%, yeah.
100%.
She's absolutely
it's just the way she
all
plays.
In. Yeah, 100%. Yes. It's brilliant.
But she's also, she's had a good season. She had a good Eurobasket, excuse me. I thought she played excellent for Turkey in the World Cup qualifiers. So it's not just like a one-off. She has improved and she's young. Erdogan can come in and give them a little bit of physicality in the guard spot. She can knock down open threes. I think the signing and getting Elif Bayram away from Besiktas was a big move by Galatasaray. Yep. For me, she's one of the best offensive rebounders in the women's game, but she doesn't get credited with them because she's forcing the defensive box outer, like it's going out of bounds. So it's a team rebound, offensive rebound, then a rebound for her. And just, the ability to get out and run. So it's sometimes easy to forget about those players because of the superstars that Galatasaray have. And a lot of attention is obviously around them, especially offensively. But they are a very, very big part of this team's success this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, the stat, like you say, the stat sheet, the box score isn't necessarily shouting that, but they absolutely are. Whether it's one or two of them coming in and picking up a few minutes, giving some rest, but keeping the level and the intensity up, if not raising it, when some of those kind of import starters and stars are taking a breather, or it is that second string where they have 3 or 4 Turkish players on the floor at the same time, that they're having a big impact. When they do go to that kind of second string, the one thing is, it's a completely different Galatasaray. It's like 2 different teams playing. So when you've got one Turkish player with 4 of the kind of imports playing, they play a very cosmopolitan European style game.
Right.
And then when you get a solid Turkish core, it changes more to being like the Turkish national team, which is a very different style of basketball. Is that a good thing to have kind of Jekyll and Hyde in a team? Is that a bad thing when you're heading to a final 6 that you have to or you can switch between the two?
You know what? I don't mind it. I think it's more annoying for the opponent
True.
if the style and the physicality changes when the second rotation comes in, because I do, they bring this different kind of grit. It's really like the intensity that they come and they play with and maybe it is because they know they're only going to play, maybe max 3-4 consecutive minutes.
Yeah.
While giving, the other players a rest. So I think it's more of an advantage, to be honest, and causes more difficulty to the opponent than to their own team.
I've got to admit, I'm the same as you. If you're coaching against that, you're basically running kind of 2 scouting reports almost to a certain degree of like, okay, we've now got to run this or change this, or your rotations potentially will adapt and change, and maybe you have to be willing to give up more fouls when it gets to physical. There's so many different calculations you're having to do
right
when they kind of flip that. With that domestic core, taking it outside of the sport of basketball now, how important is it for a club like Galatasaray, who have a huge community kind of fan base? You live, breathe, and die that club, every sport that they play. How important is it that their women's basketball team have a Turkish core, have a domestic heart to their roster?
I think it's so important. I think it's also important for the growth of women's basketball in Turkey. There's a big challenge right now with women's volleyball and women's basketball in Turkey, and just having one of your biggest clubs in Turkey to have success at the women's game and playing in a final 6, I think it's going to help grow and get more young girls interested in playing basketball, which always will end up helping a national team in the long run as well. So I think, I like that they haven't just gone out and relied on imports and, signing foreigners, that, they really put in the effort and went after a good young core group of Turkish players. Like, let's not forget, this is going to be a really, really good generation because these players who play significant minutes for Galatasaray are young, and they're going to be around for a really long time.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got, they're all early to mid-20s. They've all got, a long, long career ahead of them. And playing alongside some of those import superstars will raise their game. Getting more minutes at this level will raise their game and ultimately impact the national team. Final kind of sub-question on this little section around this domestic core. Do you think there should be intervention from a FIBA perspective around this, or EuroLeague Women's competition perspective around designating so many spots for domestic players, or even young domestic players? Is it spots on the roster? Is it a certain number of development spots? Is it you have to have one domestic player on the court at all times? Because there's, domestic leagues around Europe that do that. Is that something that FIBA should look at? Would you be pro them looking at something like that, or are you happy to kind of have this free market competition where it's a bit more loose?
I personally think that should be left at the domestic professional league, like the Turkish league does. In domestic games, they have to have at least 2 domestic players on the court at every time. I do think it would become very, very complicated if you asked to do that at the FIBA, EuroLeague, or Eurocup level, just because, there's some leagues that are so much stronger national teams. I don't think we'll see. I don't think it will develop the game as well because maybe one team is going to not produce or have as talented domestic players where they won't be able to compete. So I don't think we'll see as, I don't know, how can I say it? The competition, I think we would only have about 4 strong teams overall if they went to a kind of rule like that. And I think the rule of only having two foreigners compared to European, I think that's a good rule. You can have unlimited European players, of course, but for example, that doesn't work in France because in France the rule is you can only have 2 foreigners and 2 non-French people, non-French Europeans. So no team is ever going to have more than that. So that helps domestically to build the French players. And for me, I don't think FIBA should get involved with that. I think they have their rules in place for a certain reason, and I think it works.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree. I'm all in on this one. I believe you have to force their hands. The money at the moment sits in the professional game. It doesn't always sit within national federations. Fenerbahce have huge amounts of money. Galatasaray have huge amounts of money. You go into other leagues, other countries, similar situation. I would like to force their hands to have to develop domestic talent. If you said to them, 2 players on the floor have to be at all times, your nationality have to be domestic players, it's forcing you to put money into your development program because you're not going to win. You're not going to beat a Spanish team because Spain have a great development program. You're going to struggle against French teams because you have a huge pool of EuroLeague Women's ready players. So it's going to turn around to Italy's and Turkey's and Hungary's and all of these others and say, you're going to have to pour money now into developing players. And it might be that you say to them, okay, we're going to introduce this rule in 2-3 years' time. So they have a chance to go and grab a 16-year-old or 5 or 6 16-year-olds and put some effort into turning them into capable 19-year-olds or 19-year-olds into 22-year-olds that can play. That's fine. But I think I'd love to see them force the hand a little bit and put some of that money back in because right now, Fenerbahce is a frustrating one. I think Galatasaray, I'll sing their praises because their domestic core do get good minutes and have an impact. Whereas Fenerbahce, I just feel like they should be playing more minutes. They should be on the floor more. They are good enough. The 3/4 Turkish players they lean on should be on the floor. They're good enough to play, and at the moment they're losing minutes because it's easier to bring in that international superstar than it is to put money into your youth team program and grow your talent. So for me, I would love to see it happen. Will I ever think it'll happen? I don't think it will ever happen. I don't think it'll ever happen because I think there's too many politics to jump through, too many hoops to jump through to get that one done.
I think there's too many politics, and I think the issue is with the Turkish teams. I don't necessarily believe it's with the other countries because I do think that they put more development into, their youth development programs, and we see the results of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I think it's more of that's why I think it's more of a Turkish basketball issue and their federation issue, in my opinion.
I also wonder what the ripple would be for someone like Frida Buna. Would that make her more valuable to a German team to push themselves up into EuroLeague Women's, bringing a domestic player like that back? Because obviously Germany's missing within EuroLeague Women's. I have no idea when the last time we had a German team in EuroLeague Women's. I've been commentating 5-6 years.
Olaf Lang won with Sandy Brondello, his wife, when she was playing back in the, what was it, late 90s, early 2000s?
There we go.
Probably around then. So yeah.
It's a long time. So there's countries that we just need to find a way to bring it a bit wider because, it does come down to that domestic conversation for me.
Yeah. I think, you brought up the Frida Brunner example. I don't think there's as much money in Germany. And then so she's going to miss out on opportunities to make money then because
don't get me wrong, you're not. True.
So I can't see it benefiting, some of the stars as well. Because then, I imagine Frida's going to probably have a big contract next year, especially after what she's done the last 2 years. But she was under contract, so she went back to Estudiantes. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't think clubs in Germany are ever going to have a lot of money to spend in women's basketball,
Yeah.
and you don't want her to miss out on an opportunity
Oh no,
because this club
absolutely.
is, yeah.
For
So
the issue you've
it's
got,
interesting though.
it is that bump in the road, because it would
Yeah.
mean that you'd probably have 5 or 6 free to booners instead of 1 in the
Yep.
future, because the development money would be there. But I don't know. Interesting. One final question before we wrap up for today. Galatasaray lead the EuroLeague Women's in blocks per game, lead them in rebounds per game. That dominance in those kind of categories, how big will that be for them when they head to the final 6?
I mean, rebounds, yeah, you always kind of want to focus on rebounds. And, it's one of those things at the end of the day, if you say, okay, you win the rebounding battle, you win the free throw shooting battle, you shoot more free throws or make more free throws than the other team. Blocks you don't really talk about, but it's clearly a big part of their game because they are the best, but they also, I think, I was going back looking at some teams in previous years. I mean, this is a very good front court that they have. They're tall, they're long, and they're getting it done on the defensive end as well. And, that right there, it's just they're already protecting the paint. So paint touches, paint scores. They limit teams to do that, and they force them to have to try and beat them from outside. And it's been really, really successful. So it's really, it's an interesting category, statistical category, more the blocks, because we don't really talk about that in the women's game. And this has, with Awaka Queer, it's really, it's a part of her game. And I think they do such a good job of protecting the paint. And well, it translates because, they're coming up with blocks, they're coming up with defensive rebounds. So they're, putting teams into low percentage shots as well.
Yeah, I've been super impressed by them. And obviously, like you say, the plaudits kind of go to Juhas, go to Kuyer. And understandably so. They're combining, I wrote it down, they're combining for 16 boards and 2.5 blocks a game between them. Find me another front court duo starting two in the front court that deliver that. And it does have a huge impact. As a team, they're averaging over 4 blocks a game. That's 4 less jumpers. That's 4 less field goal attempts a game that the other teams are having. And, if you're winning games by 5, 6, 7 points, that's completely changes the dynamic of a game. How, trying to flip this now, how does having that power, in the front court change what the backcourt can do?
I mean, you can get out and run. Not that Galatasaray is a really high-paced team offensively, which I think they could be more, because guards don't need to rebound down, because your bigs are going to come up with the rebound anyway. And that, you can start to leak out, take off, because they get the job done. I also think, defensively, they can go ahead and put a little bit more ball pressure here and there, because if they do get beat, you have that backside help and a big rim protector who, I don't think, I want to shoot over either a Dorka or a Walk, because their arm span is taller than their height for sure. And, it's intimidating. So just the confidence to defensively be like, you know what, they're going to have my back if I'm a little, out of position and I get beat off the dribble. So I think it helps the guards knowing that that's there offensively and defensively.
Yeah, I think you could definitely see it defensively. I think the on-ball pressure that they're able to apply, like you say, the confidence it gives them, but also knowing that who they're playing against will look up and will make that decision to go, yeah, I'm going to come back out. And they're not going to attack the rim because they don't, they know what those percentage opportunities are. I like the idea of transition. I think the issue you've got is they're probably not a transition team. You've got 3 pass first players. Johannes saw it all week in Lyon for the World Cup qualifiers. Her vision and her passing ability is phenomenal. Same for O'Black, same for Smalls. They all are, get the outlet pass, look up, who's ahead of me. So they're not pushing necessarily that transition, they're not those kind of players. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see if they could put something more transition in there, but I just don't think they have the roster to do it. The other thing with this dominance in the bigs that, for me, goes under the radar and absolutely needs to be a spotlight shone on is Elizabeth Williams, right?
Right.
We talk about Kuya, we talk about Juhas. Yes, they're getting the plaudits and all of this kind of stuff, and rightfully so. We are certainly not taking away from them. But then you've got Elizabeth Williams coming off the bench, and I'm just like, as a coach, to have that level, quality, experience of big coming off the bench is just a godsend in that situation. Because if one of your frontline bigs get fouls and things like that, the stress is gone immediately. Like, okay, we're okay. The quality's not dropping. You can just rotate quite easily. As a coach, how is that going to help him at the final six, though, that he has this rotation at bigs? And you mentioned Byram as well.
Yeah.
Has a nice, easy rotation through the bigs. They can be more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because you kind of forget about Williams, and this is a player who her skill, her talent, her experience. I mean, EuroLeague finals with Fenerbahce, with Mersin, and you're like, oh well, she's kind of having an off season. She's still like,
Yep.
sorry, almost a double-double,
Yep.
and you're like, well, it's normal that maybe her production is down slightly, but she gets to play less minutes. So, she doesn't need to conserve her energy like we have seen her play bigger minutes in the past. And she also gives them a different look where, Dorka and Awak, they kind of want to shoot from outside, where Williams wants to fight underneath. And I actually think she does a really good job of running the break as well for a big, even though they're not a super up-tempo type team. And she gives them a little bit of a different style when she checks into the game. And yeah, it's so funny because you don't, you kind of forget that coach has this like great interior rotation because we spend so much time which should be spent on their front court that has obviously led them all season long, or in the running for some awards this year in the EuroLeague. So yeah, it's kind of what can go wrong when you have that kind of a roster.
Yeah, it's it's kind of delivered what we expected. We expected them to be at this stage, expected them probably, to make it straight through to the semi-finals. With that, they'll be facing either Lund or Zaragoza in the semi-finals. Who would they rather face? If you're Galatasaray, who would you rather go up against? Because this is a horrible one, right? This is like death by poison or death by firing squad. It's kind of like, okay, it's going to be painful either way. I'm not sure I know which way to go. It's tough.
That's a hard one. I'm not sure. Most recently Basket Long kind of put them on their heels a little bit, and they barely won at home, had to go into overtime against them, and end up losing the second leg. They got the third leg, so I think either way, they're not going to really want to play either one of those teams, knowing that they probably are the most skilled team going into the game, if it is Zaragoza or Basket Land. I think it's so important because they are so talented to just, concentrate on your game. Don't worry about who you're going to end up playing. Yeah.
I think, I agree with you. I think they have to be, if they're the best version of them, there are very few teams, and I don't think Lond and Zaragoza will stay with them if Galatasaray are the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Looking at this, if this was anywhere else, I would say if I'm Galatasaray, I'd rather face Zaragoza. As it's in Zaragoza, I think I'd rather face Lond. And that just shows you how powerful that home crowd could be and the impact they could have on which direction these games go. I'm super excited. Either way, do you still see Galatasaray as favourites in that semi-final, whoever they face?
Yeah, I do. I think when, like we've said, I think if they can play at the level that we have seen them, I do think they've been a little bit inconsistent this year. But when they've played good basketball and everyone is kind of playing at the level that we have seen them play throughout their careers, I think that's a team who should be playing in the finals come Sunday.
Yeah, and I think without doubt, it's fair to say they should consider themselves to have a very good chance of being European champions at the end of the final six, right? I don't think anyone would be stunned if Galatasaray lift the trophy on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, that wraps up episode 5. Shona, thank you once again. An interesting trawl. We went a few sideways tangents in that one. That was fun. We went off in some different directions. I hope you've enjoyed it at home listening in as well. Please do make sure you subscribe to Hoops and Headsets wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a follow on social media. And we'll be back with our final episode in our Final Six preview series as we'll have a look at our favourites, I suppose, is an early claim. But yeah, Fenerbahce, our final team to have a look at in this series. So thanks for joining us, and I'm sure we'll see you all again soon.